I was gonna say, did you have like? Because I feel like not just artists, but specifically artists, because you guys are under a lot of public scrutiny. But did you? Because you're so much more than an artist, right? And sometimes fans will just look at you through like the music lens as opposed to like who you are as a human being, right? And I think a lot of us get so wrapped up in associating our identity with our profession, right? And there's some people are like, well, what are you if your profession goes away? What are you if radio goes away? What are you if hip hop goes away? Did you have like a hard time getting, because you had a lot of eyes on you in terms of like the next up, you know what I'm saying? Kanye cosigns, the Rockefeller shit, you know, was there a point in time where you like kind of came to like, yo, I got to kind of like remember who I am and separate who Vic Mensa is and who like hip hop sees me as and who I am as like a human being. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's a constant thing, is to recognize that my identity as a human being and as like a spiritual being is not the same as my Instagram.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, this thing does not represent me in totality. And I think that our propensity as people that live in the public eye can be to place all weight in that. But the type of music I make and the art I create, that I strive to create, isn't something that's based on fame or clout or money or you know, anything like that. That's never been my North Star. You know what I mean? That's never been why I started to do this. I think oftentimes in today's hip hop, especially, like, it's a means to an end. You know what I mean? People are like, man, I wanted to do this because I saw they was rich. I wanted to get rich.
Right.
You know, which is great. But that was never and has never been my MO. That was never why I started doing this, you know? I was inspired to do this because the way Common talked on record spoke to me. It gave me perspective about myself. You know what I mean? The way Tupac talked on record helped me through tough shit, you know, as a child and as a man. And those are the reasons why I started to do this. So getting in that position, you know, to be there with the people that I idolize coming into this, although that's amazing and that's like a dream come true, that's still not the main reason why I ever did this. But you could get caught up in that though. You know what I mean?
Easy.
I was having a convo with No ID the other day, man. You know, he was like, yeah, you got tossed into the motherfucking like the whirlwind, no, you know what I mean?
You were on SNL.
Kanye, Jay-Z, Beyonce in the mix of that. But like I said, it's like you still got that magnifying glass on everything that was there before, you know? So something I've been exploring in this album and speaking about a lot is the power of my words and the power of my thoughts, you know what I'm saying? And from the time when I was 5 years old, I found a notebook that was full of suicidal writings. You know,
from
me.
That you wrote?
That I wrote when I was 5 years old. And so I kind of always had a certain programming towards depression and, you know, those things will inevitably, if allowed to fester, come to pass, you know? So at the same time as I always wanted to be great, you know, I always was feeding this voice in my head that wanted to destroy me at the same time. So even though I achieved greatness, I still had no sense of how to calm down that innate urge for self-destruction that was in there, you know? So I could be, you know, on a tour with Jay-Z, you know what I mean, in front of 30,000 people a night and still be like depressed, you know what I mean? And not
living in the moment,
living in the moment, not knowing how.
Right.
And being like, I never even thought it was possible to impact those thoughts. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of the things I think that people might have seen, you know, and the behaviors that were happening simultaneously, that was just the manifestation of that other side of brain, that voice in my head. I think a lot of people experience like, man, you don't deserve this. You know what I mean? You're not worth it. Imposter syndrome. That's a real thing. You could be really who you think you are and have a voice in your head
that
telling you that you don't deserve to be here.
For real, 100%.
You know what I mean? And I was experiencing that shit constantly. So I think in many ways, I had to experience the culmination of all of that and all the controversy and the drama and, you know, being ostracized and outcasted to really get the moment to reflect and understand, like, okay, so here I am. I have been blessed immensely in that I ain't had to die behind this, you know? So now let me reapproach this with intention. Let me not just let my mind say whatever it want to say all day long and be beefing with this person and outwardly expressing whatever frustration I'm feeling internally through all these other things. Like, because it ain't about that. You know what I mean? It ain't about that. Policeman get up today, shoot a nigga with his hand in his hoodie. Man, he probably having a bad day in his own, you know what I mean?
Right.
But he's finding someone else that he might perceive as being the problem to express whatever problems he has going on with himself.
Do you feel like a lot of your conflicts were similar in terms of you kind of dealing with whatever you were going through by maybe lashing out at certain individuals? Or
I think it was always complex. You know, I think I've been dealing with a lot since I was a child, identified that. I've also been very politically minded.
For sure.
And I've also stood on what I believe in. And the combination of those created a lot of conflicts. I mean, if you look back at all these different conflicts, 90% of the time, controversies, whatever it is, they were rooted in some principle, you know, that I felt I was standing on. That most oftentimes, if you were to write it down, would be something that people would agree with.
They'd be like, yeah.
But if you just write down the issue and the stance, the position.
No, I remember very vividly, like when X was alive, I kind of remember why you took the stance you took, and I wasn't mad at it because I think it was like because of some of the allegations that he had against him. And I was like, I mean, I get it, you know what I'm saying? But I think in retrospect, obviously, you know, not every battle is your battle. And
this is what I came to learn, really, and what I came to understand is that, like, not all truths need to be told all the time, and that judgment is for God. You know what I mean? What I don't think I've recognized and through that situation was able to learn was that judge not lest ye be judged, condemn not lest ye be condemned. You know, point a finger, you got three fingers pointing back at you. And also, man, your message is sometimes less important than your delivery. My message was so often lost in my delivery,
in your delivery,
because I'm coming from a brash, like Chicago perspective where I'm like, I don't give a fuck. The shit true.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tell me it ain't true.
And
you know what I mean? But it's not just about that.
Well, you also force people at that point. I feel like there were some certain points in times where you kind of like force people to kind of, whether it's fans, people to kind of just choose sides.
And that's tough for people. You know what I'm saying? And it's also like eventually all the bickering and beefing, whatever it's about, a lot of it would boil down to, you see two fools arguing from a distance, you can't tell who is who.
Right.
You know what I mean? And if I'm just getting into it with this person and this person fucks with them, so now they into it with me, now I'm into it with them, now I'm into it.
Right.
It's like now it just adds up that people just think I'm combative. I would come down sometimes and sit down in the interview and I'd be me, and you know me, I'm kind, I'm cool, I'm funny, I'm nice. And people be like, man, I'm so surprised how cool you are. I thought you was going to come in here and try to punch somebody in the face. And I'm like, okay, I need to change my behavior because people are misunderstanding. Like,
people are going to get,
they're
going to create the narrative that, you know, from whatever information they have that's out there. And not enough people are going to.
And the thing is too, headlines.
That's how they come up with their narratives. They see the headlines and they're like,
this taught me a lot. You know, people don't research situations.
They're not going to watch the full interview.
There's so much information out there. You know what I mean? There's so many things that we're being bombarded with constantly that it's like people ain't going to check sources and see what was really said. They're seeing a headline, maybe a couple images, and they're like, cool, okay. This person is associated with that word, that action, whatever it is, you know, move on. Oh, I see it again. This person is now associated with that one.
I see it happening so much, especially nowadays. It's like, it's just crazy. Like when it comes to politics, when it comes to artists, it's like people just have their mind made up over whatever blips they see on their algorithm on IG.
Just a snapshot, just a headline. That's what most people use to formulate their opinions. And so I think it's like, you know, gotta be intentional at this point in time. Like, how do I make all my interactions to the best of my ability represent me as a human being in totality?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And how do I stand for the things I believe in without having to stand against everyone? You know what I mean? Like, it's not really necessary.